We've been negotiating for 12 months with the government and Ambulance Victoria on a new enterprise agreement or collective agreement. Unfortunately, we've had 30 meetings that hasn't resolved with any outcome. And if anything, we're poles apart, and we're very disappointed in that some of the major items that paramedics need to have resolved are not being resolved. Two of the key issues are 10-hour rest breaks, and that's to address some of the serious fatigue issues we have in the industry, and that's just been flatly refused by the government. We just can't understand that when you have all the expert evidence that says 8 hours is far too short. And the other thing is that we just want fair pay and conditions for ambulance paramedics, and we want their pay aligned with nurses and other health professionals. We're not asking any more than that we want them regarded similar to nurses and other health professionals. They do very similar roles, and we just want their pay aligned with those other professions. They're of the belief that ambulance paramedics will not strike and stop work, and historically they haven't. That's why we haven't had a strike for 36 years. But they're fed up, and they're fed up with the attitude that's coming out of the government towards them, and they are prepared to down tools, and that's what will happen if this action ballot gets up.
When do we want it? Now! What do we want? 10-hour rest breaks. When do we want it? Now!
After more than a year of failed negotiations, Victorian paramedics have finally begun an industrial campaign over their pay and conditions.
Thanks for coming. Obviously today paramedics are commencing industrial bans. Those bans have started at 7 o'clock this morning. That's right across the state. There's 8 initial bans that have been implemented. The most important ban for paramedics today will be the implementation of 10-hour rest breaks. It's a matter that we've been negotiating with government for over 12 months now that they flatly refuse to accept. We're seeing increasing fatigue in ambulance paramedics right around the state, becoming an increasing danger to them and their patients. And we can't understand why the government won't agree to 10-hour rest breaks for paramedics in this state, given that other states, the paramedics in other states have 10-hour rest breaks, except for in Western Australia. But that's just one of the bans. Some of the other bans will be just implementation on collecting data for Department of Human Services. We'll be banning upward relieving of management positions, banning of clinical trials. They're just some of the things that will occur as of today, and those bans will remain in place until we get some movement from government and the ambulance service. And of course, if we don't get any movement, then next week we'll be considering escalating the bans.
The Brumby government needs to get its head out of the sand. It needs to look at what we're asking for, which is just an OC health and safety issue. It is about...
You do 2 10-hour days followed by 2 14-hour night shifts. And in between those 14-hour night shifts, we're only allocated an 8-hour rest break. It's just not adequate. It's an OC health and safety issue. WorkSafe Victoria have said it's not enough. Every other state and territory in Australia, bar Western Australia, have said it's not enough, and Queensland are going for 12-hour rest breaks.
An ambulance union fact sheet lists various agencies who have spoken out against fatigue, including WorkSafe, who calls breaks between shifts of less than 10 hours a fatigue hazard. It also cites a study by renowned South Australian sleep researcher Professor Drew Dawson, who compares the effects of fatigue with alcohol on performance impairment, a sentiment echoed by Victoria Police. Sometimes the consequences of fatigue can be deadly. In 2007, Coroner Peter White accepted that 2 paramedics working the second of consecutive 14-hour night shifts were exhausted when they mistakenly administered morphine to an elderly man who subsequently died.
So what it's come to now is that paramedics are pushed to an absolute limit now, where we double check with the partner on a 14-hour night shift when we're so tired. We double check again that we're giving the right drug, we're drawing up the right dose, and we're giving it to the right patient. You know, we're very concerned that the public is at risk, and you know, we are professional enough to know that this is how we have to manage it. What I'm saying is that we shouldn't have to manage fatigue at these levels. We understand we're an emergency service. We understand sometimes we're going to work overtime. Sometimes we won't get a break. But what we don't expect is that every shift we are pushed to our limits. So we've now got ambos who are suffering health problems because of fatigue. I have colleagues who suffer depression. We have colleagues who are overeaters, the whole spectrum of what can happen to you physically is happening across the board to ambulance paramedics. So our health is suffering, public's health is suffering. I mean, it's just no one is winning from this.
At a recent press conference, paramedics spoke of the huge personal burden that fatigue adds to what is already a highly stressful job.
8 hours to be able to get home, have something to eat, relax, try to put it all behind you, and then get enough rest to go back and function again that night, starting at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, is very difficult. It's a terrible feeling turning up for work on your second shift, knowing you're already exhausted, you're already almost at the end of your tether, and they want you to do this again for another 14 hours.
I've worked 24, 25-hour shifts. I got home so tired I was dizzy as I walked into the front door. A lot of the people here have talked about drug calculations and being problems. It's not just that, it's an emotional state on you as well. You get so tired at times that when the pager goes off again, you just don't want to go and deal with these people anymore. And yet we have to, obviously, because that's what we do as a job. You get home at night. I had to deal with my wife during the time I worked these shifts. If she recognised the signs, she just didn't talk to me until I wound down, or I'd want to kick the cat, I want to talk to the kids. It's an emotional state that it does to you as well.
In 2008, ambulance union surveys found nearly 1 in 4 paramedics get 5 hours sleep or less a night. 87% said 8-hour rest breaks between shifts are not enough to rest properly. 75% of paramedics say they have made errors because of fatigue, including falling asleep driving and administering the wrong drugs. And more than a quarter of those surveyed have a diagnosed medical problem linked to work-related fatigue.